Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Matt Show. And today we have the honor of welcoming two very special guests, Alastair and Celine Mactaggart, who are the founders of the California Consumer Privacy organization that is moving forward this landmark bill this year on the ballot in California, 2020, November 3rd, where you can vote for the California Consumer Privacy Rights Act, which is this landmark bill that could really serve, as the title says, as kind of a foundation for the rest of the country to really take a lot of the ideas that Andrew Yang and a lot of other leaders were talking about in terms of protecting and safeguarding our data from big tech companies. And it really could be a chance to make this a big national issue. And there's nobody better to talk about it than the founders themselves. So first of all, Celine and Alastair, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And I'm interested, how you guys are obviously the founders of this organization that's been working for years now, working to just get this done on the state level in California. How and when did you first get involved in the issue of data privacy? Like, when did it even first come on your radar?
Well, as the story goes, a number of years ago, we had a dinner party at our house, and my best friend from high school brought a guest over, and we just got to talking. We had never met him before. He was a Google engineer, and at one point during dinner, he mentioned that if you knew how much we knew about you, you'd be really freaked out. And I think particularly for Alastair, at the time, that was alarming. And especially as parents with little kids, we started to learn more and more about what's going on with your data really behind your back without your knowledge and consent. And I would say that, would you agree, triggered him going into this and doing some more research on this issue.
Mm-hmm. What was kind of like, I see you have the t-shirt, it says protect kids online. Is this something like that really grabbed your attention as parents or as well as consumers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have 3 little kids who are 10, 8, and 6, and they're just sort of getting into that world. And especially now, as so many of your viewers, I'm sure, are experiencing that now we're home and everybody's online more and more than ever. I think we're really exposed. And I think it's really important to build awareness about what's going on every time you go on different websites, or even your engagement every time you like something on Instagram or in the profile that's being created on you. It's really a digital fingerprint. And so I think clearly kids is a really important part of this, and Prop 24 builds some stronger guardrails around kids as well. So that's really an important part of this bill.
Yeah. And when you first got into this issue, from what I understand, when we first talked a few weeks ago, your first move wasn't necessarily to go for a ballot initiative. You tried to move a law through the California state legislature, and that was back in 2018. What was that process kind of like? And after it passed, what because it did end up passing, what kind of motivated you to take it a step further and say, we need to have the people of California vote on this and make it the law of the land?
Well, actually, Matt, what actually happened in 2018, we did put a ballot measure together. We did get the signatures to qualify it for the November 2018 ballot. And that was the impetus, I think, candidly, for the legislature to act. I'm 99, actually, I'm totally certain that they never would have acted had we not had the ballot measure on. And so the ballot measure was a result of a compromise that we struck with the legislature. We got some more things that were not in the ballot measure. We gave up some things that they wanted to be given up. So it was a classic compromise. We got the right to see your actual data, right to delete your data. We got extra protections for kids in the law compared to what would have happened at the ballot box. We limited the private right of action to just negligent data breach. So then when it passed, what kind of the question is, why are we back here? What happened in 2019 is I kind of understood why business had agreed to sort of let the law pass. I know the legislature is perceptionally independent, but actually business, has a huge weight to say there. And the reason is because in 2019, they just came back expecting to just wipe the floor and eviscerate the law. And so there were 6 or 7 laws proposed that actually went quite far in the legislature that would have, cut out major portions of CCPA. So one would have removed all restrictions on tracking you across the websites and different devices. One would have removed all vehicle data generated by your car from the coverage of the law. One would have removed all insurance products from the law. So it was apparent to us that, look, business is never going to stop. This is the raw material that makes these companies worth trillions of dollars. They want to preserve their access to it for free, and so we need to get special protections in here. And for those of your viewers who don't know, initiatives are different than regular law because an initiative can't be changed by the legislature. So what the approach we're taking now is actually we don't mind the changes as long as they don't hurt consumers. So what Prop 24 will do if it passes, Prop 24 will say to the legislature, hey, here's a new law. You can actually change anything you want with a simple majority, just like any other law, except you can't do anything that's going to harm consumers. You can't hurt consumer privacy. And that's sort of a one-way gate that allows for flexibility, but prevents, the dead of night, Google coming in and just eviscerating the law and saying, okay, we're going to cut out these restrictions, that kind of thing.
It's a bit of an insurance policy. And I think that's what's so important about understanding with Prop 24 is that, yes, amendments can be made. They should be made in the legislature, but they have to move towards privacy. They can't roll things back. And that's really important for people and voters to understand.
Yeah, that's interesting that it passed in 2018, and kind of like what you said, Alastair, it wasn't necessarily that they wanted to do it. It's more that they were forced into doing it. And then right after, the very next year, they're already trying to destroy what they had just did.
6 months.
It's fascinating. I'm interested, like, what is it in this bill that is such a bad deal with the tech companies that in a lot of that are based in California and like Silicon Valley? Why are they so opposed to this bill? Like, why are they so opposed to the idea of just protecting data?
I think one of the things right now for those of your viewers who don't know, the part of the world that has sort of the best privacy protections is Europe right now. They have a law called GDPR. It's been around for a couple of years. And one way to think about this law in California is it would just give us in California the same protections that 500 million Europeans have with respect to their data, right? And so the interesting thing about the companies is not all of them are opposed, because not all of them are the same, because the business model of privacy of Apple is very different than the business model of Facebook, right? And so, for example, Apple and Microsoft extended the current privacy law, CCPA, voluntarily to all Americans. They didn't have to do that, but they did because they understand privacy is good for their business. Because the more consumers trust the company, the more business they're going to do with the company. I do think that what's happening in sort of globally, if you're Facebook and Google and you know everything about everybody, and that's been what's fueling your growth, it's the prospect of that ending is difficult. And look, these companies will survive. It's just they will be doing different things, and it won't be quite as ubiquitous. I mean, right now, what very few people know is that Google, Facebook, they're tracking you, whether you're logged in or not, whether you've ever had an account or not. They track you across all websites at all times, basically, and they're compiling information on you. So that's the part that most people don't know.
Yeah. Well, you go into like, I didn't even know that they can track you even when you're not logged in. Like, what are some other like obscure like things that the certain companies could be doing with your data that this law would stop and prevent?
Well, one of them, most people don't know about geofences, but you can draw a line around any building in the country, and then you can work with the phone company and the apps and these big data aggregators to track every smartphone crossing that line. So that could be who went to this demonstration in the street. That could be who's going into rehab, who's going to this clinic, that clinic. And you can actually get a list of all the smartphones that cross that line and then advertise them or put them on a list. It's really very invasive technology.
It happens quite often. Even it's no surprise that I went shopping into a unnamed big box store. And then that evening, I'm starting to get ads from that store on my Instagram. And it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And I think that is like at the end of the day why hopefully that this bill will pass. But it's interesting. There's someone that I follow pretty closely. He's a kind of like a economist on the left side of the aisle, and he kind of had a concern about Prop 24, which surprised me. And I'm trying to pull it up here real quick. I can't find the specific comment he wrote, but it was something along the lines of basically his concern with the ballot initiative, ballot initiative itself was that the language was perhaps just too broad, not specific enough. Is that something that like you think that should be a concern, or like how would you respond to that, I guess?
I have a couple of responses. One, I come back to the amendment process that we built into this, with humility, because our crystal ball is not perfect. And the amendment process we built in is, hey, look, the legislature, in its wisdom, can fix any part, can change any part. If they want to make the language more specific, fine, as long as it doesn't harm consumer privacy. So that we feel like there's a really good safety valve there. And that the law should change over time, and that the law will have to change because technology is changing. Right now, we're carrying phones around. 25 years from now, it might be like, oh my God, Mom, you used to carry a phone with you? So who knows what the technology
It might be sooner than that. So it's hard to know.
That is a great point, and it's like it's why it is so important to get these laws into place now before the technology just explodes to a point where we don't even know the type of thing you talk about with the geofencing and the tracking you when you're not even logged in. There's gonna be like these crazy things that we can't even imagine put into our heads that we're gonna be like, how are companies able to do that? But this is gonna be so far in the future. Which brings me to my next question is, let's say all your hard work and so many others' hard work pays off and this ballot initiative passes. How do you think that what California is doing, and I just always find it interesting how California tends to lead the nation on a lot of different issues. What do you think? How do you think this bill could serve as kind of a floor for perhaps one day there being federal legislation where we don't even have to have the Microsofts and the or at the Apples of the world make it voluntary because everybody just has to do it? It's the law of the land.
I think that's an extremely important part of this. And I think if this passes and Californians, 40 million people in California have new, stronger data privacy rights, and then you take how many people voted for this, call it 9-10 million people, you take that to DC, I think that sends a very, very strong message to Congress that 9 or 10 million people in the United States, and the 5th largest economy in the world, are for this. And I think that that would set a very strong floor for federal legislation. And you look at other states, I believe Nevada has 3 million people. So I think the magnitude of the electorate and of voters in California bringing this is quite tremendous. Do you have anything else to
Well, the only
say?
other thing is just everybody probably knows this, but until you actually think about the statistic, so 20% of the House Democratic caucus in DC is California, 20%, and the Speaker. So we clearly have an outsized importance in the country, and I think if this passes, we are going to be leading the way for the country. And one way or the other, either other states will do it, or the Congress will do it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to say that people in Nevada, Georgia, New York should not be able to have the same rights of 40 million people in California.
Yeah, and it really is, whether we go straight to federal, or, I mean, that would honestly be the best, or even if it just takes the domino effect where you have to go state to state and suddenly so many states have it where the feds just look up and they're like, okay, let's just do this.
Right.
What is this something that let's still hopefully again Prop 24 passes. Do you think that you'll continue leading the fight outside of California on this issue?
Yes, and let me just tell you,
we even talked about this, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this question.
Well, let me just tell you, like, we've never believed that sort of one law, okay, then we're done, right? This is a process like any other process. Think about antitrust, which is 140 years old, and we're still kind of developing that doctrine of law. I'll give you your listeners and your viewers a fact which this law doesn't fix because it's a specific to election law. But one thing I'd like to address next year: if you're a company like a Facebook or a Google and you want to use Matt's or Alastair's or Celine's information to try to influence an election, and you don't work with that other candidate, you just do it on your own. That's your First Amendment right as a corporation, and there's no disclosure required. So there should be some disclosure required. If you're Facebook saying, oh, it's existential for us if Warren gets elected, and then you try actively to make sure that the Biden voters get out and that the Warren voters don't, you don't have to disclose that.
Yeah,
it's a lot of power. And
yeah. I mean, it really is crazy. I was reading this article the other day. It was talking about like how the tech companies now are more powerful than the legislators themselves.
Much.
We have seen that firsthand over the last few years.
Yeah. What has it like been dealing with like the opposition to the bill? Has that been something that you've been able to like find success at in dealing with it? Or is it something where it's caused like serious setbacks and roadblocks in your way?
Well, look, we were never going to do something of this magnitude without some people criticizing from the sidelines. I think there's a couple of things that opposition we're disappointed. Obviously, we disagree with them fundamentally. That part of the notion they really have a couple of themes that are just bizarre. Like one is that we promote digital redlining, and in fact, the total opposite. This law would allow people with their sensitive personal information to say you can't use it business, and that includes your race, your ethnicity, and then profiling. This lets you say you can't profile me, and by the way, you have to tell me about the algorithms that you were profiling me about. So, the notion that we would spend awful lot of time and money in 2018 and then do so again this year to weaken on the law is just it's crazy. So we're getting thicker skin as we go through this, and but we're gratified. Look, we have almost 30% of the California senators endorse us. We have the California State Controller. We have the Consumer Watchdog, Common Sense Media, the NAACP. And by the way, the NAACP would never have supported us if we were digital redliners. We have the firefighters. We have the building trades for the unions. We got Andrew Yang is our chair of our advisory board.
Professor Shoshana Zuboff, who is a world-renowned expert and author in privacy, is a supporter of Prop 24. So we have great privacy experts, legal scholars. So I think part of this has been a journey, but we feel proud to have so many wonderful advocates with proven track records promoting and saying, vote yes on Prop 24.
Yeah. It's you definitely, if anybody watching like wants to learn more and kind of learn about the people that are working behind this, some of the names you mentioned, and just get an overview of the bill. Everything's at, I think your website, it's caprivacy.org.
That's right.
Yeah, and I have the link down in the description. You mentioned Andrew Yang, and of course, my audience, we happen to be big fans of Andrew Yang. We supported him for president, and his attentiveness to this issue of data privacy and protecting our data, and he even took it steps further from hopefully years in the future where we actually get paid for our data. But like he's a real champion of it. So has it been like? Or I guess first, let me ask: how did you first like find out Andrew Yang was going to get involved with this?
Well, we reached out to the Data Dividend Project. Enoch Liang runs that, and so we facilitated an introduction that way. It seemed like an obvious fit given his support for all of us being able to, get paid for our data. We're talking about opposition. This is one of the fundamental disagreements. We believe that you should be able to get paid for your data if you want to, and the opposition believes that no one should get paid for their data, and that no one should be able to be paid for their data. And it's a little odd because they think of it as a civil right that everybody should be able to opt out of the sale of their data and just there's no money involved. And it's sort of like, well, but then the big companies win because they get to keep on using our data. I agree with Andrew that if we can get paid for our data, that requires these companies to put a price on it. And by the way, just like anything else, then I can take my business somewhere else. And clearly it's worth something. That's why Google's worth over $1 trillion.
That's why private jets are lining tarmacs in Silicon Valley. So to say it's not a commodity is pretty off.
So anyway, so he decided to get involved. We chatted and we said, look, we'd be honored to have him. He's got clearly a huge microphone, way bigger than we do. But more importantly, his values are commensurate with ours. Like I really, when we were watching him on the campaign trail, we're like, this guy's got some real dynamism, some fresh ideas. He's going to go somewhere. And then to have him be the chair of the advisory board, which he is now.
We never thought
super big honor.
This was a huge honor. And I think he really elevated this issue on a national scale. And I think in talking with some of his supporters who still won't take their Andrew Yang signs down in their yards, this has been quite wonderful. But to answer your question, we found out that he was on board. We were having dinner and looked at an email and just were very, very happy and honored to get that email.
Yeah, it's cool too because from our perspective, like people who supported him in the campaign, we're just so happy to see. It's really easy, I guess, like to raise your national profile by a lot and then just be like, well, that was fun. May as well just go back in the private sector and like fold over. But nah, he's just continued pushing all the things that he fought for during the campaign. So it's cool to see from both ends. Has there been any what's it just been like dealing with all this during just this crazy year we've had, with the pandemic and the election and all of that?
So, it's funny. It's a great question because getting the signatures, and you hire a signature gathering firm, they go out because we got almost 1 million signatures and it's hard to do that yourself.
Wow.
So you hire these professional firms and they go out and they get registered voters to sign. And I will say this was an easy sell because people are like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to sign that thing. Right. So everything was fine. And then COVID came along. And there was a shutdown. Now, luckily, election workers were essential workers, so we could still gather signatures, but it was much harder. So for a while there, we thought, oh my goodness, we might have wasted all this time, and this might not be on the ballot. So then we took all the time we could, and we got enough signatures. So that was good. Then Riverside County was 15 minutes late turning in their signatures. And so the way it works, it's kind of complicated, but that meant we might not qualify. And we sort of said, well, that's not our fault, guys. Like, hey, Secretary of State, can you fix this? Because this isn't our fault. This is the county's fault. I got no ability to tell the county what to do. Anyway, long story short, we had to sue the Secretary of State because the Secretary of State said, man, we don't care. And we're like, wait, almost 1 million registered voters signed this petition. They want to be on the ballot, and it's COVID. And now you're saying you just go pound sand. So we sued them. And we actually won. So it's the only personal lawsuit I've ever been involved in. I sued the state of California. We sued the state of California. We won. 2 weeks, start to finish. Very efficient lawsuit. And the judge was just like, well, of course you should make 15 minutes. Don't ding these guys. So now we're on the ballot. So it's been a crazy year. Crazy year.
It's been a crazy year, an election. I think nobody thought we'd be here, but we feel fortunate. We have a wonderful team. There are just like so many of your viewers and people, we have 3 little kids at home who are doing online school, and we're trying to get this done. And but I think everybody is in this strange position right now, but I think we feel lucky.
Yeah, definitely. Like for people who are watching this and that are very passionate about this issue and they want to make sure that this law or this initiative does pass on November 3rd, how can they get involved? Is there a way for them to potentially volunteer or spread the word?
Yeah.
On our website, there's a sign up, and then you see Mactaggart at caprivacy.org.
Yeah, that's my email.
And we would love as much volunteer effort as we can get for this lawn signs. We got some T-shirts we can hand out.
You could promote it on your social media handles, Reddit. Everything is so important right now, and I think especially because we are so isolated and we're all at home, we can't do some of the typical campaign get-togethers and things like that. So that's why digitally we have to rely on, volunteers and people to spread the word. So that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, and like to everybody watching, especially and obviously if you're in California, like just if you enjoyed this conversation and you think that this bill, it's something you just heard about and you think it would make a difference in your life, make sure you go around and just tell your family members, your friends, get them all to vote yes on Prop 24, because all it takes is just the word of mouth and suddenly we can change the whole country. So unless you guys have kind of any closing thoughts, any more topics you want to talk about, and then of course if anybody has any questions in the chat, I'd love to take those as well.
Yeah.
Well, I would just echo something you said, Matt, about power. What people think, oh, privacy is like, did I see the shirt that I looked at 2 days ago on some different website? And that's some of it, but a lot of it is power in society. And when you think about the fact that there's 4 or 5 companies that know way more about you than really you know about yourself, because you've forgotten that thing you searched for in 2015. You've forgotten that song you really liked for a while in 2017. They know it all. And then because of that, they can have an outsized impact on you. And so that's real power. And most of these companies are run by 1 or 2 people without any real governance. And so you say that they're more powerful than the legislature. These people are more powerful than Congress. They're some of the most powerful
people. They
sure
know more about us.
They're some of the most powerful people who've ever been on the planet.
That's a good point.
So
they definitely know about
mail, but somehow it's okay for them to geo-target me when I go into a health clinic.
They would have the best background research and oppo research on anybody just because they have all the data. That's really interesting. Here's a question. Apparently, I didn't know this. Tertiary asks, why would the California Nurses Association be against it?
Well, one of the opposition leaders is this fellow Richard Holliber, and he for years has worked in the labor movement. And the California nurses supported him when he ran for assembly, and he was not elected. This way these things work is they're all personal relationships. So they gave $20,000. It's obviously not going to. The opposition campaign is $100,000 in debt right now, and so it was disappointing. But we, as I say, have a much larger union endorsement. We have the firefighters. We have Ask Me as a federation of state, county, municipal employees. We have the building trades. That's 440,000 Californians in that one. So we have some real union labor support, and we wouldn't have 11 senators. That's almost 30% of the California Senate, and a couple of assembly members if we were anti-union, or if we were, this law does more for union workers, because what it does is it says you can't retaliate against an employee for exercising their rights. And then it also says, the new law says you can't use privacy as a way to stop union workers organizing. So for example, if you're a company tracking the person who's going around trying to organize the workforce, which you could do now, you can't do that in the new law. So we do a tremendous amount for labor. This one.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing this info with our audience. We certainly appreciate it. And just thank you as well for all the work that you two are doing and your team and so many others to get this passed. We're going to have our fingers crossed on November 3rd, and hopefully we can all celebrate together, virtually, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody, and take care.